Come with me if you want to live.
The sequel to a 1984 film that was a solid success in theatres but would become an even bigger hit on home video and television. After 7 years of unwanted Arnold Schwarzenegger impressions, like this one,
You could be my
director James Cameron would show us that the future is not set, that there is no sequel but that we make for ourselves.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Terminator 2, Judgment Day.
Just put up your hand and say, I swear I won't kill anyone.
I swear I will not kill anyone.
The Terminator didn't cost a lot, but made a lot of money. In accounting textbooks, they call this a shit ton of profit. Home video and TV screenings brought in more money and increased the movie's profile. Dozens of low-budget Terminator rip-offs would fill video libraries, where viewers had a choice of viewing a faux Terminator clone, or they could just watch the real thing again for the 14th time. Now, this dilemma was solved by some people by just renting both. In movie business textbooks, they call this a win-win scenario. Arnold Schwarzenegger became a bigger star with each release throughout the 80s, while writer and director James Cameron was also landing some sweet gigs. Like the high probability of AI destroying us, a Terminator sequel was inevitable, though it was a matter of lining up everybody's schedules, sorting out some issues over the rights, and coming up with an idea where you could continue the story, and ideally have the Terminator as the main character. In an early 90s Arnold Schwarzenegger biography, they called this chapter Arnold Makes Bank. In a later edition, it was changed to Arnold Fills a Bank, and then in the most recent edition, Arnold Buys a Bank, because there is no bank but what we make for ourselves. Terminator 2 would have not one, but two Terminators. A good one and an evil one. A bit like how I have two neighbours. One's a Land Rover dealer, and on the other side, a tow truck driver. Truth be told, I haven't worked out which one's the evil one yet. They do seem to spend quite a lot of time together, yet they really hate each other's guts.
Are you the legal guardian of John Connor?
In the future, the machines send back in time a new type of Terminator to kill young John Connor circa 1995. This T-1000 is a living metal that can take on almost any human shape, but for whatever reasons really likes being Robert Patrick. Future John Connor decided to send back another soldier to protect himself as a youngster, this time a reprogrammed Terminator identical to the one from the first film. In the wake of her first encounter with a Terminator, Sarah Connor trained hard and planned for Judgment Day, where she also tried to raise her son to be a future leader of soldiers. The thing is, in 1995, John Connor is a troubled youth. He's also a sarcastic arsehole, like all of those sarcastic arseholes we've been hearing so much about on YouTube.
So what's the deal?
He's been in foster care since his mother was committed to a mental institution. Apparently, and this is news to me, insisting to everyone that the robots are going to take over and destroy the world is a one-way ticket to a padded bedroom and a diet of tranquilizers and sleazy orderlies thinking they're cats. John Connor has learned a few tricks from his estranged mother, like how to hack an ATM to get money that he uses to shovel into ancient arcade machines like Missile Command. Oh, I get it, well done, Jim. The good Terminator is an older T-800, and this particular design is a Model 101. The bad Terminator is the T-1000 that has all the bells and whistles, in that it can actually take the form of a bell or a whistle so long as they're roughly the same size. A chase with the Terminator and John Connor on a motorbike and the T-1000 in a big rig ends with John surviving, but it's not the end of the matter, just the beginning. The time travel device has a lot of caveats to avoid flooding the past with futuristic killing machines. Jim Cameron, being that sort of filmmaker, will attempt to head off any audience questions in the script.
It doesn't work that way.
John and the Terminator get acquainted, with the youngster realizing he's got a remote control bodyguard. A rock'em sock'em kill'em robot.
Jesus, you were gonna kill that guy!
Of course, I'm a Terminator.
After busting Sarah Connor out of her mental hospital in one of the film's most memorable sequences, the trio regroup.
You have to be smarter than that. You almost got yourself killed.
It turns out some circuitry from the first Terminator had survived and is being studied by Cyberdyne Systems. Cyberdyne would of course go on to invent Skynet, which would launch the missiles that destroy the world when somebody did this. Hey Siri, set a reminder for lunch with Al and Melissa.
Done.
launch all missiles.
John Connor teaches the Terminator how to be human, but not just any human. Of course, it's a sarcastic, bratty arsehole.
And if someone gets upset, you say, chill out. Or you could do combinations.
Chill out. Dickwad.
They always say, write what you know.
Why do you cry?
The relationship between John and the Terminator is oddly enough the source of much of the film's heart and also humour. Sarah decides the future needs changing by killing the scientist who would invent the tech that leads to Skynet's takeover, Miles Dyson, while John and the Terminator race to stop her. They may have gotten there just a little bit sooner if they hadn't stopped at Burger King for a bite to eat.
Now listen to me very carefully.
Blowing up Cyberdyne doesn't end the threat from the murder bots from the future, because they still have the T-1000 on their ass like a boil that needs lancing. Then begins the 1,000 or so endings to an action film. There's a long chase with the T-1000 in a helicopter and then more fun on the freeway. The T-1000 is apparently destroyed after being frozen, but is then not destroyed, and then we have another cat and mouse game in a foundry. The Terminator is nearly destroyed, Sarah is nearly killed, John is nearly killed, and each time they think they've defeated the T-1000, guess what? You ain't defeated shit. But finally, and I mean finally, the T-1000 has been beaten for good and utterly destroyed. However, to finally stop the threat of the machines, all traces of future tech has to be destroyed, which means the good Terminator. With all of the Terminators destroyed, hope for humanity's future was restored, though any hope of a good Terminator sequel that could follow on from this without ruining it was completely lost.
Because if a machine, a Terminator, can learn the value of human life, maybe we can too.
Terminator 2 was a sequel that was much bigger than the first film.
Put your leg down. Did you call moi a dipshit?
Terminator 2 has something that's missing from the first movie, a sense of humour and a tentative optimism for the future.
That's good. Maybe you could practice in front of a mirror or something.
Terminator 2 was set in 1995 but completed and released in 91, where, even as an R-rated film, it quickly became one of the most expensive movies ever made, where it cost more than $100 million to make. It would go on to pull in around 5 times its budget from its worldwide theatrical run, plus who knows how much more from licensing deals, video rentals and television sales.
Easy money.
Who could forget the tie-in products such as T2 branded dog food or T2 branded fishing gear? Since the first movie's success, Arnold Schwarzenegger had become a bigger star with each movie, with films like Predator, Running Man and Total Recall cementing him as one of the top action movie stars. But he'd also appear in hit comedies Twins and Kindergarten Cop.
It doesn't feel pity, or remorse, or fear, and it absolutely will not stop.
Any Terminator sequel had to star Arnold Schwarzenegger, and this time there was little chance that he was going to play the villain. But he'd also have a hell of a lot more dialogue this time around, with one-liners and reams of exposition. Unlike the first film, Cameron wrote the script knowing he was going to have Arnie play a Terminator.
No problemo.
In this regard, Schwarzenegger's Austrian accent probably helps make it seem more robotic and unreal than if he spoke with a perfect American accent.
It becomes self-aware at 2:14 a.m. Eastern Time, August 29th.
Though it could have been much worse if people misread Austrian and instead had the Terminator speak with an Australian accent.
Come with me if you want to live, you dumb c***.
Since the first film, Linda Hamilton had starred in the popular genre series Beauty and the Beast. For this tougher version of Sarah Connor, Linda Hamilton went through a punishing training regime to face her biggest challenge, working for her future husband, James Cameron. Linda Hamilton has a lot more to work with in this movie. Sarah Connor has a lot more depth, having become obsessive, paranoid, and almost psychotic since the events of the first film. Edward Furlong managed to make an initially whiny, obnoxious brat teenager into somebody you perhaps didn't want to see die. In his earliest scenes, wow. I don't wish ill on the young John Connor, though I would happily watch skateboarding videos of him falling on his face and maybe just dislocating his shoulder. Furlong was a surly kid playing a surly kid, a whiny brat who suddenly realizes all the bullshit his mother had been feeding him since birth was in fact real. In light of this, I will be more open-minded about the existence of the Tooth Fairy, Santa Claus, and Tom Cruise.
All right, now hit me. Give me 5. Do the same thing. Do the same thing. All right.
Furlong was 13 when the film was made, and of course, as happens to kids over a long shoot, he grew and his voice started to change.
You got a quarter.
By the end of the film, you couldn't imagine anybody else playing John Connor, though in the fullness of time, everybody would play John Connor. There are other folks in smaller roles. Joe Morton appears as Dyson, the man who was going to destroy the world without realising how and why. Different strokes, Danny Cooksey as John's buddy with the 13th worst mullet of 1991, as John's foster parents as Xander Berkeley, and Jeanette Goldstein, who'd made such an impression as Vasquez in Aliens. Robert Patrick would go on to be a gigging actor appearing in dozens of movies and television series, though he'd forever be somebody that would turn up in a movie or a show and the audience would start doing mental gymnastics trying to work out where they've seen him before and then suddenly rise to their feet when they realise it's the T-1000. Earl Bowen reprised his role as psychiatrist Silberman, and in a deleted scene, Michael Biehn would show up as Kyle Reese in a dream sequence. The film would originally end with an epilogue of an aged Sarah Connor, though this was replaced at the last minute by the ending in the theatrical cut, an ending that fits better with the tone of the film.
The future's not set. There's no fate but what we make for ourselves.
The Terminator series' second most famous line was a line cut from the first movie.
There's no fate but what we make for ourselves.
But its use in this film would be something that goth scholars would embrace. The film's final message: hey, the future's not set and it doesn't have to suck, but you always got to work at it. Unless, of course, you're James Cameron, in which case you can keep making super expensive movies that look fantastic, where you can showcase the very latest in special effects, and then ruin them years later with half-assed AI remastering.
It was a machine. It was a machine, but...
James Cameron is known as a perfectionist in all things. He would put the cast and crew of this film through take after take until it was perfect. He would demand perfection from everyone. James Cameron would stall releases of several of his films for years until he had the time to personally supervise their remastering process for maximum picture quality. But when he had the time, he shrugged his shoulders and ironically just let AI tools screw it up.
We know this guy's involved.
Terminator 2 was originally shot on film. Film has grain, though if you watch Terminator 2 now, it's had so much digital noise reduction and colour regrading applied with each new release that the film looks less and less like the 1991 release, and less like a film. If the idea was to make everybody look like the liquid metal state of T-1000, then mission accomplished. Though I guess James Cameron really should be applauded for pushing the envelope of AI tools.
Everything I've been brought to believe was all made of bullshit.
Cameron co-wrote the script for Terminator 2 with William Wisher, starting with the idea that if Arnold was the good guy, they'd need a second and very different Terminator. Cameron's previous film, The Abyss, had included a groundbreaking effect sequence from ILM, a fully computer-generated entity that could mimic human shapes. When that scene ended up being one of The Abyss's highlights, Cameron thought they could use the technology to create a second Terminator, perhaps as a computer-generated character that, looked like liquid metal. It could change shape and form simple tools. And originally, it would have had this liquid look for most of the film. Effects legend Stan Winston, who would handle a lot of the film's physical effects, thought the T-1000 needed to have a more defined look. Cameron eventually hit upon the idea of him taking the form of a cop, which in many ways worked to the film's benefit. Firstly, Robert Patrick's icy performance was something that added to the character's threat much more than its suddenly sprouting knives.
Say, that's a nice bike.
Plus, they would save a massive chunk of change by not having to create a CG character for every single shot that the T-1000 was in. The film could now afford to, blow up a real building for the movie. So guess what? They blew up a real building in the movie. It had a huge amount of effects, some miniatures, some very effective use of back projection in the future scenes and its scenes set at night. But of course, the thing that the film was known for was the groundbreaking use of CG for the scenes of the T-1000 in its natural state, as well as the transformations using a technology that would become known as morphing. Morphing takes two different images, and the computer interpolates the differences between the two. The liquid metal form of the T-1000 looks like it was the easiest thing to do, but if you look very closely, it's not the shape of the T-1000 that's most impressive, it's the reflections of the environment which actually make the effect work. Such was the impression that the CG parts made on viewers that they didn't notice that a lot of the T-1000 was made with more traditional techniques. The bullet hits on the T-1000 were sculpted and cast and would pop out of a specially made harness worn by the actor. Some actors wore appliances in scenes, at other times they're augmented with CG.
fuck is it?
This was not Robert Patrick regretting his choice of career, but the T-1000 in various states of damage, which was sculpted and shot on set with the actors. Plus, as with the first film, there were a number of puppets used to depict the Terminators and their victims. And in some scenes, twins were used, including Linda Hamilton's sister.
There is no fate but what we make for ourselves.
Jim Cameron doesn't sound like a superstitious person, though looking through his filmography, most of his movies seem to start with either the letter T or the letter A. It seems to work for him, so I'm going to hedge my bets and call my next film Terry the Amazingly Adventurous Aardvark Teaches Accounting.
Nice place you got here. How's business?
Give me a break.
Like several of Cameron's movies, he would later put together an extended version of the film, where he would restore some scenes. Often, extended versions can bog down a movie, because yes, the scenes were usually cut for a good reason. The T2 extended version still works quite well, adding a bit more context here and there, so I guess it's a coin toss as to which version you should watch. Terminator 2 saw Brad Fiedel return to score the film with his synth and sampler-based soundscapes, sometimes with very alienating sounds which do suit a film about machines trying to destroy any hope for humanity's future. It's mainly mixed low in the soundtrack. It's buried in the film's audio mix, deeper than a dead pharaoh's food taster. Terminator 2 is an action-packed, funny, serious, and never anything less than well executed. It's only the second Terminator movie, yet it's also the last time that the series wasn't at least somewhat disappointing compared to the previous effort. Like how U2 used to be great back in the day, and they still make music now, but you know, you have to draw a line somewhere. Terminator 2 was released in the summer of 1991 and became the highest grossing film in the US that year. Worldwide, though, it would come in a close second to Beauty and the Beast.
I'll be back.
Arnie and Cameron made out like bandits. Though, as has happened a few times in the Terminator film series, post-Terminator success eluded many. Both Robert Patrick and Edward Furlong's careers would be stunted by their individual substance abuse issues. Furlong was indeed later fired from reprising his role in Terminator 3 over such issues. Terminator 2, though, looks amazing. Well, it looked amazing at the time, where it told a good action sci-fi story and made it with the budget that it needed. It has good performances from the cast, excellent direction, a script that manages to give you the context of what you needed without overloading you with exposition. But even if you wanted to pick at any loose threads, it's still such an incredibly fun time.
I insist.
Terminator 2 never feels like you're watching a lazy remake of the first movie. Everything about this film is well done. Even the stuff that now feels oh so 1990s
Dipshit.
comes off as fresh and original, either because Cameron did it first or Cameron did it better.
Trust me.
Terminator 2 has a spark that is missing from most of the sequels that came after this film, where they would pass into other directors' hands, which makes this the peak of the series. It's a bit like a kid who learned to read by age 4, but who stays in high school until he's 25 because he keeps flunking English and hopes that, this year, fingers crossed, he'll finally get a C-.
Thank you for explaining.
Terminator 2 adds in enough new twists and tricks to make it feel fresh, from turning Arnold into a good Terminator to the shapeshifting T-1000 and the film's groundbreaking use of computer effects. Terminator 2 is the answer to the eternal question, what the hell are we watching tonight?
Hasta la vista, baby.
If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.
But your way out of Lion with your bitch slap rapping and your cocaine tongue